DeGregorio's Session44. Curious how to do this week without sharing too much in a forum. I think what I'd like to say is that cynicism, I suppose, is the thing we fight against as people, hopefully, and as artists, at least, or at least just maybe I speak for myself. The cynic says, what the hell do you care what you say on this, because nobody's paying attention. And that's true. The optimist or the idealist would say, whoever gets the message, small or mighty, make it your best message, lead with your best, try your best, mean your best. And I guess that's where I'm going to land today. The sad thing about having personal things occur in your life for someone you love is that you have to be there to support them, and that it doesn't mean things are going badly in your life. They're going badly for a person you care for and for their family, and yet that's your family, so it's happening to you too. But oddly, you are also able to sort of hold space for the fact that you did something you were hoping to do, and you're trying to, do more of it. You're trying to take your next steps. And so when life interrupts, what are you to do? Lose all momentum, lose all hope, because a sad story is appearing in front of you, which is, also goes back to the project and goes back to what the hell I'm here to do and why I'd even sit in front of this laptop to communicate, and what ultimately probably represents some of my frustration because of how much this stuff means to me, and how much the people in my life mean to me, obviously, too. How you do anything is how you do everything, and I think that might even include, how you love. And that's kind of where I'm at. And it they say not to take yourself too seriously, and that's true. But a very familiar note in acting classes, so not the one I was recently taking, it's anathema to certain schools of thought, or it's too often repeated, and it often doesn't mean anything, and it's just, sometimes it's a way to cajole intensity, it's a way to cajole speed, it's a way to cajole anger and or tempo or volume. And directors and acting coaches don't often want to give line readings and or ask for results, and so they'll say raise the stakes. And that was sort of just a buzzy thing that my last acting coach didn't want sort of bandied about, or it was from a school of training. That was not what we were there to do. We were going more off the temporal, the instinctual. And so, but the note, if you pull it back and you apply it to life, and that's why I sit here today, even though I could confidently have excuses for not sitting at the desk session when I'm, averaging 30 views. The cynical part of my mind, the battle I fight within. Just take a day. Oh, fuck it. Nobody cares. Wrap it up, dude. Who cares if you break the streak, or, there's not a hungry audience. Like, I hear that. And yet this is as much for me as it is for anybody else. And that's finally the case with how I'm going about my business and my art It's got to be for you first, I think, or at least you're compelled to do things against conventional wisdom, against odds, against indifference, against rejection. You're just compelled to keep going, and this is my tiny, infinitesimal attempt to raise the stakes, as if, and this is why it's a irksome note, because why are we doing any of this shit if the stakes of living aren't what they actually are, that people pass, that people will pass, that we're all going to pass. We all have a terminal case, And I know it's not to take yourself too seriously, which is all jumbled into but what do you do about it when it is happening for someone you care about, that they have to face this? We all have to face it. I know, I guess he's not a great guy to quote in an emotional time, but Louis C.K. said the phone is now that thing that we all now have. So while a smoker knew there was a pressure valve they could turn off by lighting up, excusing themselves to burn a heater on the street, we all know that now, and we all know what's going to do it. Scroll. Check. Check. Oh, a recipe. So while you're in a waiting room in sorrow, oh, wow, beef stroganoff, And maybe that's just as well, and maybe that's the way your mind works anyway. But all I'm saying is, if this shit doesn't mean anything to me, then why am I doing it? And if I'm not going to be here someday, then why do I walk around with any purpose? It's either nihilism or it's trying, and this is my way of trying and to try to put it together for myself, And so if I can go back to keeping appointments, even if I have to be available for a loved one, if I have to keep appointments, and it's not like these are appointments that are paying me, you would take bereavement leave from a job to deal with some of this stuff. But when it's you and it's your stuff, why would it be any less? Why wouldn't you give yourself a break? And, that's the difference, I guess, between a jobby job and a calling and a passion and a thing, and not to be too precious about it, and certainly not to be too precious about something that isn't currently putting bread on the table. Why do it? And is it unseemly? And I battle that all the time. But how long am I going to be so well-mannered as to not say my piece and not stand up for the people I care about and who've done right by me and who have shown me kindness over the years and doing right by theirs and, and showing up. And so, there'll be a day when I cannot and will not be able to plug this shit in and put the lights on and take a goddamn shower. Though that day will come, and I guess that's the Dylan Thomas thing about, rage into the night, and do that for people who are at the door, And so in this world of content and the fear of losing everything, the saddest part for me with the fear of the industry going away is that it's a dream that goes away. But, I'll be damned if going back to raising the stakes and that we all have a terminal case of life, and there's not a lot of jokes in this one, and I'm sitting here talking, wondering how the fuck I'm going to clip out something funny when I'm talking about mortality, taking myself too seriously, but it gets serious sometimes, and I talk about that in my show, and maybe part of what is my procrastination about everything is I have to live with what I put out there, and I'd like to be prolific, but I'm really weather testing this piece because I talk about how We don't always get a say in things. So that should be how you proceed. Petty bullshit, nonsense. It's hard to live on that edge of living existentially pure. I would venture to say that all my efforts in, let's say, the last 15 years to try to right my well-being ship has been, will you stand up when things get tough? I was not functional when my dad left. I was not a functioning person, to be honest with you. And that's where I was at. And I'm not ashamed. I was a wreck, and as you will be. It's taken me a long time, even as an actor, if that's what I really need to do, is to tap into my emotions. Now they're really on the surface because of a lot of the work I've done. I think you've heard that before, that the older you get and you see the scene of menopausal women or aging men weeping at commercials, and that occurs, and that's what's happening. But I'm getting a bit off track, and it's getting a little personal. But I talked about writing to theme or writing to your log line. And I think even a joke, funny joke, all these things I'd like to put through the lens of, impermanence / permanence, and things can still be about day-to-day living, banalities. You still got to eat. You still got to sleep. But when life gets hard, the test of your functionality is at hand. And I think that's where I go with my art. And you have to be sure that you're not just being full of shit about it. I talk about that's really what it was for me, was a way to cope. Because the high ideals of drama, the high ideals of characters in Shakespeare, the high ideals of stagecraft, of connecting with your scene partner, the truth, all that stuff that is in the, jargon of acting and acting training. And what really got me fired up was that there was actually an orthodoxy of the truth and drama and tragedy and comedy and tragedy. And the classical training was very lofty, and it made you feel part of a continuation, and it's so antiquated in a way, and it's so ancient that when you see a movie, one of the cheat codes, I think, to writing, even in mass media, is just to use classical structures, but bury it in, modern trappings, and bury it in, set it in a, whatever. And then everybody's like, oh, that stuff was so cool. And it's like, yeah, because they literally used 3-act structure. They literally used the hero's journey. They may have made the buffoon, a buffoon principal in a high school could be Pantalone in Commedia dell'arte. And you could enter the way to play it that way. I mean, there's a million things that are just what they now call cheat codes or hacks. And one of the hacks is to stick with, classic structure and classic ideals, I suppose. And it's hard to live up to, it's really hard to live up to. And sometimes you just want to, the classic example is everybody's weeping and hollering in church, and then they, fucking flip somebody off in the parking lot. It doesn't last an hour, And I think, and maybe I'm too pure-hearted and too naive and too Pollyanna, but that's why I wanted to be an artist, was to sort of see how long and how strong you could hold on, and for those 2 hours a night, if you were in a play, could you hold on to that ideal and project it and be an antidote? Why is everybody going crazy that Oasis is back live? I don't know. They weren't particularly important to me. I do love those hits they had, but they fought against them. Now their better nature finally got them back together on stage, which is a narrative that's played out over decades and for their fans. And there's something to it, I suppose. But if you've seen the set list, they're playing, they got the 3 big bangers at the end of the show, so they're gonna tease it out, and then, man, once you hear the first chords, you get to sing along, and I think that's holding on to the classical ideal, the idea that we're at our best, and we can be at our best for 3 minutes at a time, 2 hours at a time. And so if I'm doing that, does my show all vanity and all hearing the critics before they get a chance to look at it, before I shut myself down? Am I writing from that place? And using some of the cheat codes, that's what all the craft is for. That's why you play needle drops, and that's why you stop saying what you're going to say and then pick it up on the next scene, and that's what the lights will do. That's the craft. That's the part that I have some say in and can't wait for. And it's still going to be sad what goes on in your life outside of this stuff. And so, yeah, we were all looking for distraction from the slings and arrows, and they can't persist in true times. And so I am being oblique just because why wouldn't I be? And it's not my place, but why are you doing it? Why am I writing? Why am I persisting? Why am I, how do I motivate myself? In physical therapy now, I know there are places in the show, in my one-man show, which is what the hell the point of this desk session was about. There are places in my show where I'm going to need to dance. I mean, not like Bolshoi ballet, but I'm going to need to dance. I'm going to need to recreate clubbing in the 90s in New York City. I'm going to need to recreate, some follies of partying in some places, and without giving it away, I'm going to have to recreate things. And currently, my injury doesn't allow it. And so when I am thinking about not doing the third set, because what happens at my therapy is I'm only on the clock for a half an hour, and then they double it up, and so I have to basically go to the gym by myself in the physical therapy appointment, because he has another client, so he gives me my marching orders, and so that's the purpose, that's the purpose-driven way. I don't want to be in shape for the beach and have 6-minute abs. I got to work on that, but like I need it for the things I need to do, and want to do. And if I've heard said, I think I heard Talia Shire, I don't know who she was quoting, and it may have been her line, but she said an actor is an athlete of the heart. And so physical fitness is something I now have to, I've always was. I was a gym rat until I wasn't, until I got, off the good foot. And I'm back on it, but then I get hurt, and now I have to march on and fight through and carry on, because I have the privilege to carry on. And I want my show to be funny, and I want it to be joyful and bordering on as funny as it was when I did stand-up, but I also want the pathos, and I want the payoffs of the dramatic arcs and the stakes I'm trying to raise in my own existence and in my art. And I'll share something I just added to the show, and I don't know, it's a simple thing, but I ran for president of the class in 8th grade, and I asked my dad, who do I vote for? Which is already, I'm off, because he says, you vote for yourself. You vote for yourself. And I said, why? Well, okay, cool. That makes sense, I guess. And then he said, because you need to be the kind of person someone else would pull a lever for. So if you can't pull it for yourself, then what kind of, it seems simplistic and obvious. And he's talking to a 12-year-old or 13-year-old, as it were. I don't even know why I had the question, because that's the question you have to answer as an artist. Certainly one who's going to stand up as a solo performer with something you've written. An actor's a different thing. That's an interpreter. But someone who's going to do his own solo thing and stand behind what he wrote first you got to vote for yourself, And 2 Saturdays ago was a big vote for myself, and I learned a lot. I learned, okay, now all the preciousness is over with, all the babying yourself, all the fear of putting it out there. You've alleviated it for those 7 people, and that has to be your litmus test of being brave now, moving forward. Let's fucking go, and let's put it out there, and let's not go quietly into that good night, and live for the people who aren't going to always be here and who were there for you. And make your shit about something would be my only bit of advice. And I'm going to try to take it myself, so that it's not just vanity and it's not just wanting to be seen. I think I've worked that out. You wouldn't hang in there for that long if it was just about that, because I've had plenty of attention. So it's not about that anymore, and it's just throwing my 2 cents in, and if I can get lucky, having fun, God damn it, and being one of the few and the lucky that get to do stupid shit and still keep a roof over their head. And it's probably no more important than that. And I don't want to be the self-important artist, but at least for a minute, in your eyes, in your heart, in your fingertips, it's got to be, I'm going to vote for myself. I'm going to write something that will get a vote. And the vote is too easy these days because it's a view. But when the vote is a butt in the seat, it's got to start with me, and it's got to start with love, and it's got to start with high stakes. Otherwise, we're writing soap operas, right? So one day I will be able to share the opaqueness, and it'll be a mundane item for you to understand what the particulars are, if it's even something you need to know. We're dealing with someone's passing, and but every tick of the clock is you getting closer to that, and so we have to live as if, and that's a great acting tip and note. And I don't know that it's over intellectual, but if you can, every word you say every day you wake up, every line out of your mouth, every line you try to write it as if it's the last one, you're going to get to say. And there are funny as ifs. Do it as if you've got to take a leak. Ha ha ha, right? And then it gives you something to play, as opposed to a mood, a grunt, a feeling. And then obviously stay in the moment. But sometimes you can trigger things with as ifs, and I think that's effective. So, and I think that's what any practice of spirituality or art or fitness or whatever, you're doing it as if, you're trying to keep in the light, So I'm not sure it was what it was meant to be. 44 here, Reggie Jackson, number 44, baby. Good old Yankee, one of my favorites. But that's where we're at today. I rambled, I shared without sharing, and I think it's got to be both. I got to be able to maintain and keep this going. This buys me a week, I can do what I may have to do to be supportive. And I thank you for paying attention to the death session number 44. I hope this wasn't too indulgent of my emotions, but let's just not go into that. Good night. All right. Peace.